In the shadowy underbelly of Chicago's roaring streets, where ambition clashed with the law and fortunes were built on forbidden empires, no one imagined that the city's most notorious figures would rise to infamy only to face the relentless grip of justice. Welcome to Easy Case Channel, where we dive into the true tales of history's most captivating criminals. Today we explore the lives and legacies of Chicago's most dangerous people, drawing from documented facts and historical records. Let's begin. Case 1. Al Capone. Born on the 17th of January in the year 1899 in Brooklyn, New York, to Italian immigrant parents Gabriele and Teresa Capone, Alphonse Gabriel Capone entered a world far from the glamour he would later chase. His father worked as a barber, his mother as a seamstress, and the family settled into a modest life in a Brooklyn neighborhood teeming with opportunity and peril. Capone was the fourth of 9 children, growing up in a household that valued hard work but struggled against the tide of urban poverty. As a boy, he showed promise in school, but his fiery temper led to expulsion at the age of 14 after he struck a female teacher during an argument. From there, the streets became his classroom. He took on odd jobs, a candy store clerk, a bowling alley pin setter. But it was his association with local gangs that shaped his future. By his late teens, Capone had joined the 5 Points Gang, a notorious group of young Italian-Americans in Manhattan, where he honed his skills in the rough and tumble world of organized crime. It was during this time that he earned his infamous nickname, Scarface. After a barroom brawl left him with 3 slashes across his left cheek, courtesy of a rival's knife. Though he despised the moniker, it stuck, becoming a symbol of his unyielding toughness. In his early 20s, Capone caught the eye of Johnny Torrio, a shrewd gangster who saw potential in the young man's blend of street smarts and loyalty. Torrio, who had moved from New York to Chicago to expand his operations under the wing of his uncle, Big Jim Colosimo, invited Capone to join him in the Windy City around the year 1919. Chicago was a booming metropolis, but beneath its skyline lay a web of vice, gambling dens, brothels, and emerging bootlegging operations fueled by the onset of Prohibition in 1920. Capone arrived as a bodyguard and enforcer, quickly proving his worth by handling the dirty work that kept Torrio's interests secure. He married May Josephine Coughlin, an Irish Catholic woman, on the 30th of December in 1918, and their son, Albert Francis, known as Sonny, was born shortly after. The family settled into a modest 2-story home on South Prairie Avenue in Chicago's Park Manor neighborhood, purchased for $5,500 in 1923. It was here that Capone began building his domestic life amid the chaos of his criminal ascent. Under Torrio's guidance, Capone helped transform Colosimo's empire. Big Jim Colosimo had dominated Chicago's vice scene, running hundreds of brothels and gambling houses. But he resisted diving into the lucrative bootlegging trade that Prohibition promised. On the 11th of May in 1920, Colosimo was gunned down in his own cafe, a hit widely suspected to have been orchestrated by Torrio and Capone to clear the path for expansion. With Colosimo out of the way, Torrio took control, and Capone became his right-hand man, overseeing the importation of illegal alcohol from Canada and distributing it through a network of speakeasies and warehouses. The operation grew rapidly, generating tens of millions in revenue annually. Estimates suggest around $60 million from bootlegging alone at its peak. Capone's organization, later known as the Chicago Outfit, employed hundreds, from truck drivers to enforcers, and extended its reach into suburbs like Cicero, where Capone set up headquarters in the Hawthorne Inn. But success bred rivals. The North Side Gang, led by Dean O'Banion, posed a constant threat, hijacking shipments and encroaching on territory. In 1924, Capone arranged O'Banion's elimination in a flower shop, a move that ignited the infamous beer wars. O'Banion's successors, Jaime Weiss and Vincent Drucci, retaliated fiercely. On the 20th of September in 1926, Weiss orchestrated a drive-by shooting at Capone's Cicero Hotel, riddling it with over 1,000 bullets, though Capone escaped unharmed. The violence escalated. Weiss was killed in another ambush later that year, and the wars claimed dozens of lives, including Capone's brother Frank, who died in a shootout during an election in Cicero on the 1st of April in 1924. Capone's response was ruthless. He expanded his arsenal, employing bombers like James Bell Castro to target enemies' businesses. By 1925, after Torrio survived an assassination attempt and retired to Italy, Capone assumed full leadership of the outfit at the age of 26. His empire now spanned gambling, prostitution, and racketeering, with annual revenues estimated at $100 million, equivalent to over $1 billion in today's terms. He cultivated a public image as a benefactor, donating to charities and opening soup kitchens during the Great Depression, earning him admiration from some quarters as a modern Robin Hood. Politically, he wielded influence, allegedly contributing $250,000 to William Hale Thompson's mayoral campaign in 1928, which Thompson won. In return, the outfit enjoyed protection from law enforcement. Capone even hosted lavish parties, mingling with celebrities. Essen purchased a luxurious mansion on Palm Island in Miami Beach for $40,000 as a winter retreat. Yet the pinnacle of his infamy came on the 14th of February in 1929 with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Seeking to eliminate his rival George Bugs Moran, Capone's men, disguised as police officers, raided a Northside gang garage on North Clark Street. 7 men were lined up against a wall and machine-gunned down in broad daylight. Though Capone was in Florida at the time, providing an alibi, the public outcry was immense. Newspapers dubbed him Public Enemy Number 1, and federal authorities intensified their scrutiny. President Herbert Hoover personally urged action, leading to investigations by the Bureau of Prohibition and the Internal Revenue Service. So Capone's downfall began not with murder charges, but with tax evasion. Despite his vast wealth, he reported minimal income, living extravagantly on unreported earnings. In 1931, after a series of arrests, including a 1-year sentence in Philadelphia for carrying a concealed weapon in 1929, he faced federal indictment on 22 counts of tax evasion for failing to report over $1 million in income from 1925 to 1929. The trial, held in Chicago's federal building before Judge James Herbert Wilkerson, exposed his lavish spending, custom suits, jewelry, and properties that far exceeded his claimed earnings as a second-hand furniture dealer. Witnesses, including bookkeepers, testified to ledgers showing profits from gambling and bootlegging. Capone's attempt to bribe jurors was thwarted when the judge switched panels at the last minute. On the 17th of October in 1931, he was convicted on 5 counts, sentenced to 11 years in prison, a $50,000 fine, and over $215,000 in back taxes plus interest. Capone began his sentence at Atlanta Penitentiary in 1932, where he enjoyed privileges like special meals until reform stripped them away. Transferred to Alcatraz in 1934, the island prison's isolation broke his spirit. There, his health deteriorated due to untreated syphilis, contracted early in his career, leading to neurosyphilis that caused dementia and physical decline. Paroled on the 16th of November in 1939, after serving 6.5 years, he spent time in a Baltimore hospital for treatment, including early penicillin therapy. Retiring to his Florida estate, Capone lived quietly with his wife May. His mental faculties diminished to that of a 12-year-old. On the 21st of January in 1947, he suffered a stroke, followed by bronchopneumonia and cardiac arrest. He died 4 days later at the age of 48, surrounded by family. His body was returned to Chicago for burial, first at Mount Olivet Cemetery, then reinterred at Mount Carmel in 1950. The Chicago outfit continued under successors like Frank Nitti, but Capone's era of unchecked power had ended, leaving a legacy etched in Chicago's history as the ultimate symbol of Prohibition-era crime. Case 2, John Dillinger. Born on the 22nd of June in 1903 in Indianapolis, Indiana, John Herbert Dillinger grew up in a middle-class neighborhood, the younger of 2 children to grocer John Wilson Dillinger and Mary Ellen Lancaster. Tragedy struck early when his mother died in 1907, leaving his strict father to raise him and his sister Audrey. The family relocated to Mooresville, Indiana in 1921, where young Dillinger's rebellious streak emerged. Fighting, theft, and bullying marked his teen years. He dropped out of school to work in a machine shop, but soon turned to crime, stealing cars and enlisting in the United States Navy in 1923, only to desert after 5 months aboard the USS Utah, earning a dishonorable discharge. Back home, Dillinger married 16-year-old Beryl Ethel Hovius on the 12th of April in 1924, but steady work eluded him amid economic hardship. Desperate, he teamed with friend Edgar Singleton to rob a local grocer on the 6th of September in 1924, assaulting the owner and stealing $50. Arrested the next day, Dillinger confessed on his father's advice, hoping for leniency, but was sentenced to 10 to 20 years for assault and battery with intent to rob plus conspiracy. He served time first at Indiana Reformatory, then transferred to Indiana State Prison in 1925, where he spent nearly 9 years. Prison hardened him. He befriended seasoned robbers like Harry Pete Pierpont, Charles Mackley, Russell Clark, and Homer Van Meter. Learning bank robbing tactics from German ex-military criminal Hermann Lamb, who emphasized meticulous planning, roles, and getaway strategies. Paroled on the 10th of May in 1933 during the depths of the Great Depression, Dillinger found no jobs waiting. Unemployment soared, banks foreclosed on farms, fueling public resentment. Within weeks, he resumed crime, robbing his first bank in New Carlisle, Ohio, on the 21st of June, netting $10,000 with a small crew. More heists followed, including a bank in Bluffton, Ohio, on the 14th of August. Arrested in Dayton on the 22nd of September, he was jailed in Lima, Ohio, awaiting trial. Meanwhile, his prison friends plotted his rescue. On the 22nd of September, 10 inmates, armed with guns smuggled in by Dillinger earlier, escaped Indiana State Prison, killing 2 guards. 3 weeks later, on the 12th of October, Pierpont, Clark, and Mackley, posing as officers, raided the Lima jail, shot Sheriff Jess Sarber dead, and freed Dillinger. Now leading the Dillinger gang, he embarked on a year-long spree, robbing banks and police arsenals for weapons like machine guns and bulletproof vests. In November 1933, they hit a bank in Racine, Wisconsin, and another in Greencastle, Indiana the following month. On the 15th of January in 1934, during a robbery at First National Bank in East Chicago, Indiana, Officer William O'Malley was killed in a shootout. Dillinger was charged but never convicted, as his bulletproof vest saved him. The gang's exploits captured national attention. Dillinger's charm and habit of destroying mortgage records during robberies endeared him to some as a folk hero, robbing hated banks. Pursued relentlessly, Dillinger was captured on the 25th of January in 1934 in Tucson, Arizona, after a hotel fire exposed him and associates like Billy Frechette, his girlfriend. Extradited to Indiana, he was held in the supposedly escape-proof Crown Point jail for the O'Malley murder. But on the 3rd of March, Dillinger carved a fake pistol from wood, or possibly smuggled a real one, blackened it with shoe polish, and used it to overpower guards during exercises, locking up a dozen and stealing the sheriff's car with inmate Herbert Youngblood. Fleeing to Chicago, he crossed state lines, violating federal law and drawing the Bureau of Investigation, soon to be the FBI, into the hunt under J. Edgar Hoover, who labeled him Public Enemy Number 1. Reunited with his gang, Dillinger continued undeterred. On the 13th of March, they robbed a bank in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. 6 days later, the First National Bank in Mason City, Iowa. A shootout at St. Paul's Lincoln Court Apartments on the 30th of March left Dillinger wounded in the leg, but he escaped. Hiding in Mooresville with family, he recovered before moving on. In April, Frechette was arrested for harboring him. The gang sought refuge at Little Bohemia Lodge in Wisconsin, but on the 22nd of April, FBI agents raided based on a tip. A fierce gun battle ensued. Dillinger and others fled through the woods, while associate Babyface Nelson killed an agent elsewhere. By May, Dillinger underwent plastic surgery in Chicago to alter his appearance and fingerprints, adopting the alias Jimmy Lawrence. He lived with girlfriend Polly Hamilton, working odd jobs while planning more heists. But betrayal loomed. Anna Kumpanis, a brothel madam facing deportation, tipped off the FBI on the 21st of July that Dillinger would attend a movie at the Biograph Theater. Wearing an orange skirt as a signal, she accompanied him and Hamilton to see Manhattan Melodrama on the 22nd of July. As they exited around 10:40 p.m., agents led by Melvin Purvis surrounded him. Dillinger bolted into an alley, reaching for his pistol, but was shot 4 times by agents Charles Winstead, Clarence Hurt, and Herman Hollis. He died at Alexian Brothers Hospital without uttering a word. His death ruled justifiable homicide. Thousands viewed his body at the morgue. He was buried at Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis. His spree netted over $300,000, but it symbolized Depression-era defiance, forever linking him to Chicago's criminal lore. Case 3. H. Holmes. Born Herman Webster Mudgett on the 16th of May in 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. To affluent parents, Levi Horton Mudgett and Theodate Page Price, young Herman grew up in a Methodist household that emphasized discipline and education. His father worked as a farmer and postmaster, while his mother instilled religious values. As a child, Mudgett displayed exceptional intelligence, excelling in school and showing an early fascination with medicine and anatomy. However, whispers of darker tendencies emerged. Neighbors later recalled incidents where he dissected animals, though these accounts remain anecdotal. At the age of 11, he suffered a traumatic bullying episode when classmates forced him into a doctor's office to confront a human skeleton. An event he claimed sparked his interest in surgery, but may have deepened his detachment from empathy. By his late teens, Mudgett pursued higher education, enrolling at the University of Vermont in 1879, before transferring to the University of Michigan's medical school in 1882. There he graduated in 1884 with a degree in medicine, but not without controversy. He allegedly used cadavers for insurance scams and disfiguring bodies to claim payouts on fictitious policies. During his studies, he married Clara Lovering on the 4th of July in 1878, and they had a son, Robert Lovering Mudgett, born in 1880. The marriage soured quickly amid Mudgett's infidelity and schemes. Clara returned to New Hampshire with their child, effectively ending the union, though they never formally divorced. Seeking new opportunities, Mudgett relocated to Moores Forks, New York, in 1884, where he briefly practiced medicine under his real name. Accusations of fraud and a suspicious death prompted his hasty departure. He then moved to Philadelphia, adopting the alias Henry Howard Holmes, paying homage to Sherlock Holmes, to evade creditors and authorities. In Philadelphia, he worked at Norristown State Hospital but fled after a young boy died under his care, though no charges were filed. By 1886, Holmes arrived in Chicago, a bustling city on the cusp of hosting the world's Columbian Exposition in 1893. He took a job as a pharmacist at a drugstore owned by Elizabeth Holton and her husband in the Englewood neighborhood. Holmes's charm and business acumen soon led him to purchase the drugstore when the husband passed away under unclear circumstances. Rumors swirled that Holmes may have been involved, but no evidence surfaced. He expanded the property, constructing a 3-story building across the street at 63rd and Wallace, which he dubbed the World's Fair Hotel, but locals later called the Murder Castle. Completed by 1892, this labyrinthine structure featured over 100 rooms, many windowless and soundproofed, with secret passages, trapdoors, hidden staircases, and chutes leading to the basement. The second floor contained asphyxiation chambers fitted with gas jets, peepholes for observation, and grease slides to transport bodies downstairs. The basement housed a dissection table, acid vats for dissolving remains, a kiln for cremation, and quicklime pits. Holmes designed it himself, hiring and firing workers frequently to prevent any one person from grasping the full layout. His crimes escalated during this period. Holmes preyed on vulnerable individuals, often young women drawn to Chicago for the fair's promise of jobs and excitement. He lured victims with employment offers at his pharmacy or rooms in his hotel, and then defrauded them through insurance schemes or outright theft. Many disappeared without trace. One early victim was Julia Smythe Connor, a married woman who worked for Holmes. After her husband left in 1891, Holmes began an affair with her, leading to her pregnancy. When she demanded marriage, Holmes performed a fatal abortion on her and her daughter Pearl, disposing of their bodies in the basement furnace. Another was Emmeline Segren, a stenographer engaged to a friend. Holmes locked her in a vault and asphyxiated her in 1892 after she refused his advances. Holmes's modus operandi often involved bigamy and fraud. He married Myrta Belknap in 1887 while still wed to Clara, fathering a daughter, Lucy, and relocating Myrta to Wilmette, Illinois, to distance her from his activities. And in 1894, he wed Giancana Yoke under yet another alias, using her for financial gain. His schemes extended to horse theft and selling skeletons to medical schools. He stripped flesh from bodies using acid and sold articulated remains for profit. Estimates of his victims vary. Holmes confessed to 27 murders in a sensational newspaper account sold to the Hearst Corporation for $10,000, but later recanted, claiming over 130. Modern researchers suggest between 9 and 200, with confirmed kills including Benjamin Pitzel, his business associate. Pitzel's murder unraveled Holmes's empire. In 1894, Holmes and Pitzel conspired to fake Pitzel's death for a $10,000 insurance payout. Holmes killed Pitzel in Philadelphia with chloroform, disfiguring the body to mimic an explosion, and collected the money. He then convinced Pitzel's widow, Carrie, to entrust 3 of her 5 children, Alice, Nellie, and Howard, to him, promising safety. Holmes murdered the children, Howard in Indianapolis via poison, Alice and Nellie in Toronto by suffocation in a trunk. Philadelphia detective Frank Geyer, investigating the insurance fraud, traced Holmes across cities, uncovering the children's bodies and linking him to multiple disappearances. Arrested in Boston on the 17th of November in 1894 while attempting another scam, Holmes was extradited to Philadelphia. His trial for Pitzel's murder began on the 28th of October in 1895. Despite representing himself initially, Holmes was overwhelmed by evidence, including hotel blueprints and victim testimonies. Convicted on the 1st of November, he was sentenced to death. While awaiting execution, Holmes confessed in detail, though inconsistencies marred his account. On the 7th of May in 1896, at Moyamensing Prison, Holmes was hanged. His neck did not snap immediately, and he twitched for 15 minutes before death. Buried in Holy Cross Cemetery in Yeadon, Pennsylvania, his coffin was filled with concrete at his request to prevent grave robbery. The murder castle burned down suspiciously in 1895, erasing much physical evidence. Holmes's legacy as America's first documented serial killer endures, symbolizing the era's underbelly amid progress. Shifting from the gaslit horrors of the fairgrounds to the seemingly idyllic suburbs of mid-20th century Chicago, another predator disguised his depravity behind a mask of community goodwill, preying on the trusting and the young in a spree that buried secrets beneath everyday normalcy. Case 4. John Wayne Gacy. Born on the 17th of March in 1942 at Edgewater Hospital in Chicago, Illinois, to John Stanley Gacy, a machinist of Polish descent, and Marion Elaine Robison, a homemaker of Danish and Polish heritage, John Wayne Gacy was the second of 3 children and the only son. His parents named him after the actor John Wayne, hoping he would embody strength. The family lived in a working-class neighborhood on the city's north side. Gacy's father was a strict disciplinarian and alcoholic who verbally and physically abused his son, belittling him as weak and effeminate. Young Gacy suffered health issues, including a heart condition that limited physical activity and led to weight gain, exacerbating his father's taunts. At age 11, he was struck on the head by a swing, causing blackouts from a blood clot until treated at 16. Despite the turmoil, Gacy sought approval, joining the Boy Scouts and excelling in school until dropping out after multiple transfers due to his father's job relocations. In his late teens, he briefly attended Northwestern Business College, graduating in 1963. Gacy married Marlyn Myers in 1964, and they moved to Waterloo, Iowa, where he managed her father's Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises. The couple had 2 children, Michael in 1966 and Christine in 1967. Gacy became active in the Jaycees, earning awards for community service. However, rumors of his attraction to young men surfaced. In 1968, he was arrested for sexually assaulting 2 teenage boys, including Donald Voorhees, whom he lured with alcohol and pornography before forcing oral sex. Convicted of sodomy, Gacy received a 10-year sentence at Anamosa State Penitentiary, but served only 18 months, paroled in 1970, for good behavior. His wife divorced him during incarceration. Returning to Chicago in 1971, Gacy lived with his mother before purchasing a ranch-style home at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park Township. he founded PDM Contractors, a successful remodeling business employing young men. In 1972, he married Carol Hoff, a divorcee with 2 daughters. They knew each other from childhood. Gacy volunteered as a Democratic precinct captain and performed as Pogo the Clown at children's parties and hospitals, delighting audiences with balloon animals and jokes. This facade hid his escalating crimes. Gacy's first known murder occurred on the 3rd of January in 1972. He picked up 16-year-old Timothy McCoy at a Greyhound bus station, brought him home, and stabbed him after a misunderstanding during breakfast. Gacy buried McCoy in the crawl space beneath his house, a 29 by 38-foot area he later used for most victims. His method involved luring young men, often runaways, hitchhikers, or employees, with promises of jobs, money, or shelter. Once restrained with handcuffs under the guise of a magic trick, he assaulted, tortured, and strangled them, sometimes using a rope tourniquet he called the rope trick. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy killed at least 33 victims, ranging from 14 to 21 years old. Notable victims included 15-year-old Darrell Sampson, vanished in 1976, 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton, abducted while walking home, and 17-year-old Rick Johnston, last seen at a concert. Gacy buried 26 in the crawl space, 3 in his backyard, and discarded 4 in the Des Plaines River when space ran out. His marriage to Hoff ended in 1976 amid complaints of his behavior and the house's foul odor, which he attributed to moisture. Gacy's political involvement peaked when he met First Lady Rosalynn Carter in 1978, posing for photos while wearing a Secret Service clearance pin. The turning point came with 15-year-old Robert Pist's disappearance on the 11th of December in 1978. Pist told his mother he was meeting a contractor about a job. Witnesses linked Gacy. Police surveillance revealed Gacy's prior Iowa conviction and suspicious activities. A search warrant on the 21st of December uncovered clothing, a class ring, and fibers matching victims. Gacy confessed on the 22nd, detailing 30 murders and leading officers to bodies. Over the next days, excavators unearthed 29 remains from the property and river. Gacy's trial began on the 6th of February in 1980 at Cook County Criminal Court. Prosecutors presented evidence of his crimes, including survivor testimonies like Jeffrey Rignall, whom Gacy chloroformed and assaulted in 1978. Defense argued insanity, citing childhood abuse and blackouts, but experts deemed him sane. On the 13th of March, after 2 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Gacy on 33 counts of murder, plus sexual assault and indecent liberties. Sentenced to death 12 times and life terms for others, he spent 14 years on death row at Menard Correctional Center, painting clowns and denying guilt in interviews. On the 10th of May in 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center. His last words, "Kiss my ass." His brain was examined by psychiatrist Helen Morrison for serial killer traits, but yielded no abnormalities. 5 victims remain unidentified, with ongoing DNA efforts. Gacy's home was demolished in 1979, now a vacant lot. His story exposed suburban vulnerabilities and influenced perceptions of hidden predators. Case 5. Johnny Torrio, born Giovanni Torrio, on the 20th of February in 1882 in the small village of Orsara di Puglia in southern Italy, to parents Tommaso Torrio, a railway worker, and Maria Carluccio. Young Johnny faced hardship early when his father died in a work accident just 2 years later. His widowed mother emigrated to New York City in 1884, bringing Johnny and settling in the teeming immigrant neighborhoods of Manhattan's Lower East Side. There, she remarried and opened a small grocery store, where Johnny helped out as a child, learning the value of hard work amid poverty. The streets of New York were his playground and proving ground. By his early teens, he ran errands for local gangs, displaying a sharp mind for business over brute force. Unlike many contemporaries who relied on violence, Torrio preferred strategy, earning respect as a thinker in the underworld. In his late teens, Torrio joined the 5 Points Gang, a dominant Italian-American crew led by Paul Kelly, where he honed his skills in gambling, loan sharking, and protection rackets. Standing at just 5 feet 4 inches and weighing around 140 pounds, he avoided physical confrontations, instead using intellect to rise through the ranks. By 1903, at age 21, Torrio had formed his own group, the James Street Boys, which controlled turf in Brooklyn and allied with the 5 Points. His reputation grew when he managed a pool hall and brothel, demonstrating a knack for profitable enterprises. It was during this time that he met a young Al Capone, then a bouncer at one of his establishments, recognizing the burly teenager's potential and mentoring him in the ways of organized crime. Torrio's ambitions drew him westward. In 1909, at the invitation of his cousin's husband, Big Jim Colosimo, he relocated to Chicago to help manage Colosimo's expanding vice operations. Chicago was a vice haven, with over 10,000 prostitutes and hundreds of gambling dens feeding the city's underbelly. Colosimo, who had risen from street sweeper to vice lord, owned the luxurious Colosimo's Cafe on South Wabash Avenue, a hot spot for politicians, celebrities, and gangsters. Torrio arrived as an enforcer, but quickly became Colosimo's trusted lieutenant, streamlining operations and introducing efficiency to the disorganized world of brothels and saloons. He married Anna Jacobs, a Jewish woman from New York, in 1912, and the couple settled into a quiet life, contrasting his criminal pursuits. Torrio's influence grew. He centralized control, reducing internal conflicts and maximizing profits through systematic bribery of police and officials. The advent of Prohibition in 1920 presented a golden opportunity. The Volstead Act banned alcohol production and sale, creating a black market worth billions. Torrio urged Colosimo to enter bootlegging, envisioning vast profits from smuggling Canadian whiskey and brewing illegal beer. But Colosimo, content with his vice empire generating over $120,000 annually from prostitution alone, resisted, fearing it would attract federal attention. Tensions mounted as rival gangs like the North Side, led by Dean O'Banion, began encroaching. On the 11th of May in 1920, Colosimo was assassinated in his cafe's vestibule by a gunman, widely believed to be Frankie Yale, a New York ally hired by Torrio for $5,000. With Colosimo gone, Torrio inherited the empire, rebranding it as the Chicago outfit and diving headfirst into bootlegging. Under Torrio's leadership, the outfit flourished. He established breweries in Chicago suburbs, imported liquor via trucks from Canada, and then distributed through a network of speakeasies. Partnerships with figures like Joseph Stenson, a legitimate brewer turned bootlegger, allowed production of near beer laced with alcohol. Torrio divided Chicago into territories to minimize violence, negotiating peace with rivals like O'Banion's North Siders and the Jenna brothers on the West Side. His operation employed hundreds, from drivers to accountants, and generated millions. Estimates suggest $60 million yearly at its peak. Torrio lived modestly in a South Side apartment, avoiding flashiness to evade scrutiny, but he wielded immense power, bribing officials like Mayor William Hale Thompson's administration for protection. However, peace proved fragile. In 1923, O'Banion double-crossed Torrio by selling him a brewery rigged for a police raid, costing Torrio over $500,000 and leading to his first arrest, though charges were dropped. Retaliation followed. On the 10th of November in 1924, Torrio orchestrated O'Banion's murder in his flower shop, shot by Yale, Mike Jenna, and 2 others, while O'Banion clipped chrysanthemums. This sparked the Beer Wars, a bloody conflict claiming over 500 lives in the decade. O'Banion's successors, Jaime Weiss and Vincent Drucci, sought vengeance. On the 11th of November in 1924, they attempted to assassinate Torrio outside a theater, but he survived unscathed. The violence peaked on the 24th of January in 1925. As Torrio and his wife returned from shopping, Weiss's men ambushed them outside their Clybourne Avenue home. Torrio was shot multiple times in the jaw, lungs, groin, and legs, collapsing in the snow. His chauffeur, Robert Barton, rushed him to Jackson Park Hospital, where doctors performed emergency surgery, removing bullets and stabilizing him over weeks of recovery. Capone stood guard during his hospital stay, ensuring no further attacks. The ordeal shattered Torrio. At age 43, he decided to retire. After serving a 9-month sentence for the brewery raid in Waukegan jail, he handed the outfit to Capone in 1925, advising him to maintain discipline and avoid needless violence. Torrio returned to New York with $3 million in assets, investing in real estate and legitimate businesses. He briefly allied with Lucky Luciano and others to form the National Crime Syndicate in 1929, promoting cooperation among gangs. However, federal pressure mounted. In 1936, he was indicted for tax evasion on over $200,000 in unreported income from bootlegging. Convicted in 1939, he served 2 years in Leavenworth Penitentiary. Released in 1941, Torrio lived quietly in Brooklyn with his wife, advising mob figures like Luciano from afar, but avoiding active involvement. His health declined in later years. On the 16th of April in 1957, while waiting in a barber's chair for a haircut, he suffered a heart attack and died at age 75 in a New York hospital. Buried in Greenwood Cemetery, Torrio's legacy as the architect of modern organized crime endures, his strategic mind paving the way for successors like Capone. Moving from the calculated architect of empire to the flamboyant pioneer whose opulence set the stage for betrayal and bloodshed, we examine a man whose rise from rags embodied the American dream, twisted into nightmare. Case 6. Big Jim Colosimo. Born Vincenzo Colosimo on the 16th of February in 1878 in Colosimi, a village in Calabria, southern Italy, to Luigi Colosimo, a shoemaker, and Giuseppina Mascaro. Young Vincenzo grew up in poverty amid the region's economic strife. At age 16 in 1894, he emigrated alone to the United States, arriving in Chicago's Little Italy neighborhood on the Near West Side. Starting as a newsboy and bootblack, he scraped by in the immigrant enclave, where survival often meant bending rules. When his imposing 6-foot frame and charisma soon drew him into ward politics. By 1897, he worked as a precinct captain for the notorious First Ward aldermen Michael Kenna and John Coughlin, known as Hinky Dink and Bathhouse John, who controlled the Levee District, a vice-ridden area of brothels, saloons, and opium dens. Colosimo's ascent began with labor organizing. In 1900, he founded a street sweepers union, using muscle to enforce membership and collect dues, which evolved into a protection racket. His enforcers ensured compliance and profits flowed. Marrying Victoria Moresco, a madam who ran a small brothel, in 1902, Colosimo expanded her operation into a chain of houses of prostitution. By 1905, he controlled over 200 brothels in the Levee, employing thousands of women and generating immense wealth. He diversified into gambling halls and saloons, bribing police and politicians to operate unchecked. Colosimo's Cafe, opened in 1910 at 212 South Wabash Avenue, became his crown jewel. A lavish restaurant with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and fine dining that attracted opera stars like Enrico Caruso and politicians alike. It served as a front for his illicit activities, with private rooms for high-stakes gambling. Known for his extravagant style, Colosimo wore diamond rings, pins, and cufflinks worth tens of thousands, earning the nickname Diamond Jim. He drove a white Pierce Arrow limousine and lived in a mansion on South Vernon Avenue, complete with servants and a private zoo. His marriage to Victoria provided business savvy, as she managed the brothels while he focused on expansion. However, personal scandals arose. In 1911, he divorced Victoria amid infidelity accusations, marrying a younger singer, Dale Winter, in 1920, though this union was brief due to his death. Colosimo's empire thrived amid progressive-era reforms. When Mayor Carter Harrison Jr. cracked down on the levee in 1913, closing many vice spots, Colosimo adapted by relocating operations southward and intensifying bribery. His invitation to nephew Johnny Torrio in 1909 proved pivotal. Torrio, arriving from New York, brought organizational skills, consolidating Colosimo's scattered enterprises into a more efficient machine. Together, they fended off rivals like the Black Hand extortionists, Italian gangs preying on immigrants. In 1910, Colosimo survived an assassination attempt by Black Hand members, who demanded tribute. He responded by hiring bodyguards and retaliating through his network. By 1915, his annual income exceeded $1 million from vice alone, making him Chicago's undisputed kingpin. Prohibition's dawn in 1920 presented a fork in the road. Torrio pushed for bootlegging, foreseeing profits from illegal alcohol amid nationwide demand. Colosimo, however, balked. His vice empire was stable, and he feared the violence and federal scrutiny that liquor wars would bring. This hesitation created rift. Torrio, ambitious and forward-thinking, saw opportunity where Colosimo saw risk. Rivals like the North Side Gang began muscling in on potential liquor territories, heightening tensions. On the 11th of May in 1920, Colosimo arrived at his cafe around 4 in the afternoon to meet a supposed shipment contact. Waiting in the vestibule, he was shot once in the head from behind, dying instantly at age 42. The gunman escaped through a side door, leaving no witnesses. Police investigated but made no arrests. Suspects included Black Hand remnants or jealous husbands. But historians widely attribute the hit to Torrio, who allegedly hired Frankie Yale for the job to seize control and enter bootlegging. Colosimo's funeral was extravagant. Over 5,000 attendees, including judges, aldermen, and gangsters, with a procession of 100 cars and floral tributes costing thousands. Buried in Oakwood Cemetery, his mausoleum became a landmark. Colosimo's death marked the end of an era. The individualistic vice lord gave way to syndicated crime under Torrio and later Capone. His cafe continued briefly under new management, but closed in 1921 amid reform pressures. Colosimo's legacy as Chicago's first major organized crime boss endures, his opulent life and sudden fall symbolizing the precarious throne of the underworld. That's the end of Part 3 on Easy Case Channel. Like, comment, and hit the subscribe button for more true crime stories. Case 7. George Bugs Moran, born Adelard Leo Coonan on the 21st of August in 1893 in St. Paul, Minnesota, to immigrant parents Jules Coonan, a French electrician, and Marie Diana Gobel of Polish descent, young Adelard entered a world of modest means and cultural blending. His family seeking better prospects, he relocated to Chicago's North Side when he was just 6 years old, settling into the bustling immigrant enclaves around Holy Name Cathedral. There, amid the clamor of streetcars and tenements, Coonan attended local schools but soon veered toward delinquency, drawn to the allure of quick gains in a city rife with opportunity for the bold. By his early teens, he had adopted the streets as his domain, engaging in petty thefts like pickpocketing and vandalism that escalated into more serious infractions. Neighbors recalled a boy with a hot temper and a stubborn streak, traits that earned him the moniker Bugs, slang for someone unhinged or crazy, a label that would define his volatile reputation. Before reaching his 21st birthday, Moran had already been incarcerated 3 times. First in a juvenile facility for attempting to rob a warehouse, then for participating in a horse-stealing ring that preyed on rural deliveries, and later for a freight car heist that netted him a stint in Joliet prison. These early brushes with the law hardened him, teaching survival in the unforgiving underbelly of Chicago. Released in his early 20s, Moran gravitated toward the North Side Gang, a predominantly Irish outfit led by Dean O'Banion, a florist by day and bootlegger by night whose Schofield's flower shop served as a front for illicit operations. O'Banion, impressed by Moran's fearlessness and loyalty, brought him into the fold around 1913, where Moran quickly proved his worth as an enforcer during the nascent days of Prohibition. Prohibition, when enacted on the 17th of January in 1920, transformed Chicago into a battleground for liquor control, with gangs vying for territories and supply routes. Moran, now a key lieutenant, helped O'Banion expand the North Side's bootlegging empire, hijacking shipments from rivals and establishing speakeasies in neighborhoods like Lincoln Park and Lakeview. The gang's operations generated hundreds of thousands in annual revenue, with Moran overseeing protection rackets that extorted local businesses for safety from their own violence. But rivalry simmered with the South Side's Chicago outfit, led by Johnny Torrio and his protege Al Capone. Tensions boiled over when O'Banion tricked Torrio into buying a brewery rigged for a police raid in 1924, costing the outfit over $500,000. In retaliation, on the 10th of November that year, O'Banion was gunned down in his flower shop by Frankie Yale, John Scalise, and Albert Anselmi, hitmen dispatched by Torrio, while clipping stems for a funeral arrangement. With O'Banion's death, leadership passed to Jaime Weiss, O'Banion's close ally and Moran's friend, who inherited a gang now locked in the infamous beer wars. Moran served as Weiss's right-hand man, orchestrating ambushes and drive-by shootings that claimed dozens of lives. On the 20th of September in 1926, Moran participated in a brazen attack on Capone's headquarters at the Hawthorne Inn in Cicero, where 11 cars unleashed over 1,000 rounds from machine guns, though Capone escaped unharmed behind armored shutters. The assault, one of the first recorded drive-bys, one who underscored Moran's ruthless tactics and deepened the feud. Weeks later, on the 11th of October, Weiss was assassinated outside Holy Name Cathedral, riddled with bullets from a nearby window as he crossed the street. At 33, Moran ascended to lead the North Side Gang, a position that made him Capone's primary target. Under Moran's command, the North Siders controlled bootlegging north of Madison Street, smuggling Canadian whiskey via boats across Lake Michigan and trucks from Detroit, amassing fortunes estimated at millions annually. Moran, a devout Catholic who attended Mass regularly despite his sins, lived modestly in a Northside apartment with his wife, Lucille Belec, whom he married in 1922. They had one son, John, born in 1923, and Moran shielded his family from his criminal life, often posing as a legitimate businessman. But his leadership was marked by escalating violence. He ordered hits on outfit members, including an attempt on Capone's life in 1927 that wounded his bodyguard. Moran also diversified into gambling dens and labor racketeering, strong-arming unions for payoffs. The pinnacle of the rivalry culminated on the 14th of February in 1929 in what became known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Moran had arranged a meeting at the SMC Cartage Company garage on North Clark Street to receive a hijacked liquor shipment. 7 of his men, Peter and Frank Gusenberg, Albert Weinshank, Adam Heyer, Reinhard Schwimmer, James Clark, and John May, gathered inside awaiting the delivery. Instead, 4 assailants, 2 disguised as police officers, had entered and lined them up against the wall, unleashing a barrage from Thompson's submachine guns and shotguns. All 7 perished in the hail of bullets, their bodies slumped amid pools of blood and spent casings. Moran, running late due to a last-minute errand, arrived just as the faux police car pulled up. Mistaking it for a genuine raid, he ducked into a coffee shop across the street, sparing his life. Capone, vacationing in Florida, was widely suspected of ordering the hit to eliminate Moran and seize Northside territory, though no charges stuck. The massacre shattered Moran's empire. Public outrage prompted federal crackdowns, and with his top lieutenants dead, the Northside Gang fragmented. Moran lost key alliances, and his operations dwindled as Capone consolidated power. By the early 1930s, with Prohibition's repeal on the 5th of December in 1933, the bootlegging boom ended, forcing Moran into smaller crimes like mail fraud and robbery. He fled Chicago briefly, hiding in Minnesota and Ohio, but returned to the fringes, aligning loosely with remnants of his old crew. In 1939, he conspired to forge in cash $62,000 in American Express checks, leading to a 4-year federal sentence. Released in 1943, Moran struggled in poverty, his once vast wealth evaporated. Desperate, he robbed a bank in Ansonia, Ohio, on the 29th of July in 1946, netting over $10,000. Captured soon after, he was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in Ohio Penitentiary. Paroled in 1956 after serving time, he was immediately rearrested for another bank heist in Dayton, Ohio, from 1945, receiving another 10-year term at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary in Kansas. There, his health failed. Diagnosed with lung cancer, Moran died on the 25th of February in 1957 at age 63. Buried in a pauper's grave at the prison cemetery, his body went unclaimed by family. Once a formidable rival to Capone, commanding respect and fear, Moran's legacy faded into obscurity, a cautionary tale of how swiftly fortune reverses in Chicago's criminal world. Venturing from the shattered remnants of gang wars into the calculated corridors of enduring power, where a baseball bat forged a legend and silence shielded an empire, another figure rose to orchestrate Chicago's underworld with unmatched longevity and cunning. Il Caso 8, Tony Accardo, Born Antonino Leonardo Accardo on the 28th of April in 1906 in Chicago's near West Side, to Italian immigrant parents Francesco Accardo, a shoemaker, and Maria Tillotta, young Tony grew up in a tight-knit family of 6 children amid the gritty tenements of Little Italy. His father toiled long hours crafting shoes, instilling a work ethic. But the neighborhood's poverty and proximity to vice drew Tony toward the streets. Dropping out of school after the 5th grade, he took odd jobs like delivering newspapers and running errands. But by his mid-teens, he had joined the Circus Cafe gang, a crew of young toughs operating out of a Maxwell Street hangout, known for gambling and theft. Standing 5 feet 9 inches and weighing around 200 pounds, Accardo's muscular build and quick fists made him a natural enforcer, committing burglaries, auto thefts, and assaults that landed him multiple arrests for disorderly conduct, though he avoided serious time through mob connections. In the mid-1920s, Accardo's path intersected with Al Capone, who recruited him as a bodyguard and driver after witnessing his prowess in a street brawl. Capone, impressed by Accardo's loyalty and brutality, nicknamed him Joe Batters following a 1926 incident where Accardo used a baseball bat to savagely beat 3 traitorous outfit members who had skimmed profits from a bootlegging operation. The killing solidified his reputation as a hitman, and he became part of Capone's inner circle, participating in the violent turf wars of Prohibition. Accardo was implicated in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre on the 14th of February in 1929, where he allegedly helped plan the execution of 7 North Side gang members in a Clark Street garage, though he was never charged. His role extended to extortion rackets, shaking down speakeasies and unions for protection money, generating millions for the outfit. With Capone's imprisonment in 1931 for tax evasion, leadership shifted to Frank Nitti, under whom Accardo rose as a captain overseeing gambling and loan sharking in the West Side. He married Clarice Porzani, a Polish-American woman, on the 14th of December in 1934, and they settled in River Forest, a suburb where many outfit figures resided. The couple had 4 children, 2 sons, Anthony and Joseph, and 2 daughters. Marie and Linda and Accardo maintained a facade of domestic normalcy, attending church and community events while directing criminal enterprises. By the early 1940s, after Nitti's suicide in 1943 amid federal pressure, Paul Ricca assumed control, with Accardo as his underboss. Together, they navigated the post-prohibition landscape, expanding into legal fronts like labor unions and Hollywood extortion. Accardo's strategic mind shone in the 1940s when he orchestrated the outfit's infiltration of Las Vegas. Recognizing the potential of legalized gambling in Nevada, he dispatched associates like Gus Alex and Marshall Cafano to invest in casinos, starting with the Stardust and Riviera hotels in the 1950s. These ventures funneled millions back to Chicago through skimming operations. It's where unreported cash was siphoned from casino counts. Accardo also masterminded control over the Teamsters Union's pension fund, loaning funds for casino construction and ensuring outfit influence in labor disputes. His empire encompassed wire services for bookmaking, vending machines rigged for payoffs, and narcotics trafficking, though he personally avoided drugs, focusing on traditional rackets. In 1947, Ricca stepped aside due to legal troubles, anointing Accardo as day-to-day boss while remaining an advisor. Accardo ruled with an iron fist, enforcing discipline through violence. He ordered the murders of rivals like Willie Beoff, a Hollywood extortionist turned informant, beaten and bombed in 1955, and Sam Giancana's predecessor in a power shuffle. Despite federal scrutiny, one including a 1950 indictment for tax evasion overturned on appeal, Accardo evaded incarceration, spending only 1 night in jail during his career, a brief detention in 1929. He cultivated alliances with politicians, bribing judges and police to quash investigations, and invested legitimately in real estate, trucking firms, and restaurants, amassing a fortune estimated at hundreds of millions. The 1960s brought challenges as the FBI intensified efforts under Robert Kennedy's anti-mob crusade. Accardo appointed Sam Giancana as front boss in 1957 to deflect attention, but Giancana's flamboyance and ties to figures like Frank Sinatra drew unwanted scrutiny. When Giancana fled to Mexico in 1966 amid subpoenas, Accardo resumed direct control, later installing Joey Ayupa in 1971. A bold 1973 burglary at Accardo's River Forest home, where thieves stole over $200,000 in jewels and cash from his safe, enraged him. He ordered the culprits hunted down, resulting in 6 murders of suspected burglars over the next year, their bodies dumped in cars or fields as warnings. By the 1970s, Accardo semi-retired to Palm Springs, California, where he golfed and fished, earning the nickname Big Tuna after catching a 400-pound fish publicized in newspapers. He continued advising the outfit, influencing decisions like the elimination of Giancana in 1975, shot in his Oak Park home while cooking sausage, allegedly for becoming a liability. Accardo's health declined in the 1980s with heart issues and cancer, but he outlived many peers, maintaining veto power over major moves. On the 22nd of May in 1992, at age 86, he died of congestive heart failure at a Chicago hospital, surrounded by family. His funeral drew hundreds, including outfit figures, and he was buried at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Hillside. Accardo's reign, spanning 8 decades, transformed the Chicago outfit into a sophisticated syndicate, his legacy one of unparalleled survival and influence in American organized crime. Case 9. Sam Giancana. Born Salvatore Giancana on the 15th of June in 1908 in Chicago's Little Italy neighborhood on the near West Side, to Italian immigrant parents Antonio Giancana, a fruit peddler, and Antonia De Simone, where young Sam entered a world of hardship and hustle. The family, later anglicizing their surname to Giancana, lived in cramped tenements amid the aroma of street vendors and the clamor of horse-drawn carts. Antonio toiled endlessly, pushing his fruit cart through the streets, while Antonia managed the household, raising Sam as the second of 8 children. From an early age, Giancana displayed a rebellious spirit, skipping school to run with local toughs in the Patch, a rough Italian enclave known for its poverty and budding criminal elements. By his pre-teens, he had joined the 42 Gang, a notorious crew of juvenile delinquents specializing in auto theft, burglary, and extortion, earning him multiple arrests before his 18th birthday. Giancana's criminal education accelerated in the 1920s during Prohibition's heyday. And the 42 Gang, under leaders like Joseph Barra and Frank Laporte, supplied muscle for the Chicago outfit, then led by Al Capone. Giancana, nicknamed Mooney for his unpredictable temper, derived from loony, proved adept at violence, participating in hijackings of liquor trucks and drive-by shootings against rivals. In 1926, at age 18, he was arrested for murder after a botched robbery left a victim dead, but charges were dropped due to lack of evidence and witness intimidation. He served brief stints in reformatories and county jails for auto theft, honing his skills in evasion and loyalty. By the late 1920s, with Capone's imprisonment in 1931, Giancana aligned with Frank Nitti, Capone's successor, rising as a driver and enforcer. He married Angeline de Tolve in 1933, a union that produced 3 daughters, Antoinette, Bonnie, and Francine, though his philandering strained the relationship until her death from cancer in 1954. Under Paul Ricca and Tony Accardo's leadership in the 1940s, Giancana became a maidman in the outfit, overseeing gambling rackets on the West Side. His operations included slot machines, policy wheels, a form of lottery popular in black communities, and bookmaking on horse races, generating millions annually. Giancana's cunning shone in labor racketeering. He infiltrated unions like the hotel and restaurant employees, extorting businesses for labor peace and siphoning dues. In 1944, he faced federal charges for bootlegging remnants but beat the case through bribery. His ascent quickened after World War II as the outfit expanded westward. In 1947, Giancana orchestrated the takeover of Las Vegas interests, sending associates to skim profits from casinos like the Flamingo, originally built by Bugsy Siegel. By the mid-1950s, with Accardo semi-retiring, Giancana was appointed boss by Accardo and Ricca, who remained influential from behind bars or in advisory roles. As outfit leader from 1957 onward, Giancana presided over a golden era of expansion. The syndicate controlled Nevada gaming, Hollywood labor unions, and international ventures in Cuba, where Giancana partnered with Meyer Lansky to run casinos in Havana, until Fidel Castro's revolution in 1959 seized them. Back home, his empire encompassed jukeboxes, vending machines, and narcotics distribution, although Giancana publicly disavowed drugs to maintain a code of honor. He lived lavishly in an Oak Park mansion, complete with a basement vault for cash and jewels, and traveled in armored Cadillacs flanked by bodyguards. Giancana's personal life was tabloid fodder. He romanced celebrities like Phyllis McGuire of the McGuire sisters, showering her with gifts funded by mob money, and allegedly shared mistress Judith Exner with President John Kennedy, a connection that fueled conspiracy theories. Giancana's ties to politics and intelligence agencies added layers of intrigue. In 1960, amid the presidential election, he allegedly mobilized outfit resources to boost voter turnout in Chicago's wards for Kennedy, swayed by promises from Joseph Kennedy Sr. to ease federal pressure on the mob. Post-election, however, Attorney General Robert Kennedy intensified anti-mob efforts, indicting Giancana on various charges. More sensationally, declassified documents later revealed Giancana's involvement in CIA plots to assassinate Castro. In 1960, the agency approached him through intermediary Robert Maheu, offering $50,000, later raised to $150,000, for the hit, using poison pills and other methods that ultimately failed. Giancana cooperated, hoping to curry favor and regain Cuban casinos, but the alliance soured as federal scrutiny mounted. The 1960s brought relentless pursuit. In 1963, the FBI bugged Giancana's Armory Lounge headquarters, capturing incriminating conversations about hits and bribes. That year, he invoked the Fifth Amendment over 170 times before a Senate committee investigating organized crime. A 1965 contempt conviction for refusing to testify led to a one-year sentence at Leavenworth. But Giancana's real troubles stem from internal outfit tensions. Accardo, displeased with Giancana's high profile and losses in Cuba, demoted him in favor of Sam Battaglia. Upon release in 1966, Giancana fled to Mexico, living in exile in Cuernavaca, where he continued directing rackets remotely, investing in casinos and real estate. He remarried briefly and enjoyed golf, but homesickness and diminishing influence gnawed at him. In 1974, after 8 years abroad, Giancana was deported back to the United States following Mexican authorities' raids on his properties. Settling in Oak Park, he faced subpoenas from the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence investigating CIA mob links in the Kennedy assassination. Giancana cooperated selectively, but his knowledge made him a liability. On the 19th of June in 1975, while cooking Italian sausage and peppers in his basement kitchen, under FBI surveillance outside, Giancana was shot 7 times, once in the back of the head and 6 times around the mouth, a symbolic message for talking too much. The .22 caliber silencer-equipped pistol left no witnesses. His live-in housekeeper heard nothing unusual. Police suspected an inside job, possibly ordered by Accardo or Ayupa, to silence him before testimony. No arrests were made, though theories pointed to associates like Butch Blasi or Dominic Blasi. Giancana's funeral drew crowds, but his estate, once vast, was depleted by legal fees and seizures. Buried at Mount Carmel Cemetery, alongside other outfit luminaries, his grave became a curiosity for tourists. His life, blending glamour with gore, epitomized the mob's intersection with American power structures, leaving enduring questions about his role in historical events like the Kennedy era and Castro plots. Giancana's story remains a cornerstone of Chicago's criminal narrative, a blend of ambition, betrayal, and shadowy alliances. From the opulent shadows of syndicate boardrooms to the stark horror of a single night's frenzy in a quiet dormitory, where a drifter's rage shattered innocence and exposed the fragility of safety in the heart of the city. Case 10, Richard Speck. Richard, born Richard Benjamin Speck on the 6th of December in 1941 in Kirkwood, Illinois, a small farming community, to parents Benjamin Franklin Speck, a carpenter and logger, and Mary Margaret Carbaugh Speck, a homemaker. Richard was the 7th of 8 children in a devoutly religious household. His father, a stern but loving figure who abstained from alcohol after a religious conversion, provided stability until his sudden death from a heart attack in 1947 when Richard was just 6. The loss devastated young Richard, who idolized his father and struggled with the family's subsequent upheaval. His mother remarried Carl August Lindbergh, an alcoholic insurance salesman with a criminal record for forgery and drunk driving in 1950. The blended family relocated to Dallas, Texas, where Lindbergh's abusive behavior, verbal taunts and physical beatings, targeted Richard, exacerbating his insecurities. In Dallas's impoverished neighborhoods, Speck attended public schools but performed poorly, repeating grades and dropping out after the 8th grade in 1958. Plagued by migraines from a childhood head injury, falling from a tree at age 5, he turned to alcohol by his early teens, frequenting bars and engaging in petty crimes like theft and vandalism. At 16, he got his first tattoo, "Born to Raise Hell," on his arm, a motto that foreshadowed his turbulent path. Speck married 15-year-old Shirley Annette Malone in 1962 after she became pregnant. Their daughter Robbie Lynn was born in 1963. The marriage crumbled amid Speck's alcoholism, infidelity, and violence. He once held a knife to Shirley's throat during an argument. They separated in 1965, with Shirley gaining custody. Unemployed and drifting, Speck worked sporadically as a carpenter, truck driver, and baker's apprentice. But his record grew with arrests for burglary, assault, and forgery. In 1963, he served 42 days for disturbing the peace after a bar fight. A 1965 theft conviction in Monmouth, Illinois, his childhood hometown where he briefly returned, netted probation, but violations led to 16 months in prison for forgery and burglary. Released on parole in January 1966, Speck violated terms by carrying a knife, fleeing to Chicago in March to evade authorities. There he stayed with his sister Martha Thornton, a nurse, and her family in the South Side, finding work as a seaman on Great Lakes freighters through the National Maritime Union Hall. Speck's maritime career was short-lived. Injuries and illnesses, including appendicitis requiring surgery in May 1966, sidelined him. Bitter over lost jobs, he blamed a union official for favoring others. Speck descended into heavy drinking and drug use, frequenting taverns in the South Deering neighborhood. On the 13th of July in 1966, after a day of bar hopping and arguments, Speck committed his infamous atrocity. Around 11 at night, armed with a $17 knife and a stolen pistol, he broke into a townhouse at 2312 East 100th Street, a dormitory for student nurses from South Chicago Community Hospital. The residence housed 9 young women that evening. Speck knocked on a bedroom door, forcing his way in when 23-year-old Corazon Amarao, a Filipino exchange nurse, answered. Brandishing the gun, he herded Amarao and her roommates, Patricia Matusek, 20, Nina Joshmal, 24, Pamela Wilkening, 20, and others into one room, binding their wrists and ankles with torn bedsheets. He assured them he only wanted money for a trip to New Orleans, collecting about $80. Over the next 4 hours, Speck systematically led the women one by one to other rooms, where he assaulted, stabbed, and strangled them. Victims included Valentina Passion, 23, Merlita Gargulo, 23, Suzanne Ferris, 21, Marianne Jordan, 20, and Gloria Jean Davy, 22, the last of whom he raped before strangling. Amarao survived by hiding under a bunk bed, and unnoticed as Speck lost count in his inebriated state. At dawn on the 14th of July, Amarao emerged screaming for help from a balcony. Police arrived to a gruesome scene, 8 bodies strewn across the townhouse, bearing marks of brutal violence, stab wounds to the chest, throats slit, and ligature strangulations. Speck had washed his hands but left fingerprints and other evidence. Amarao's detailed description, a pock-marked man with a southern drawl, blonde crew cut, and Born to Raise Hell tattoo, circulated widely. Speck, meanwhile, checked into a flophouse on the north side under an alias. But on the 16th of July, after hearing news reports, he attempted suicide by slashing his wrists in a Skid Row hotel. Hospitalized at Cook County Hospital, a doctor recognized the tattoo while treating him, leading to his arrest. Speck's trial began on the 24th of April in 1967 in Peoria, Illinois, after a venue change due to media saturation in Chicago. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence. Amarao's eyewitness testimony, identifying Speck in court, fingerprints matching those at the scene, and clothing fibers linking him to the victims. Defense attorney Gerald Getty argued insanity, citing Speck's history of head injuries, alcoholism, and drug use, claiming he ingested amphetamines and barbiturates that night, inducing a fugue state. Experts testified to his brain abnormalities from EEG tests, but the jury rejected the plea. After 49 minutes of deliberation on the 3rd of June, they convicted Speck on 8 counts of murder. Sentenced to death in the electric chair on the 2nd of November in 1967, Father Speck appealed. In 1972, the United States Supreme Court's Furman v. Georgia ruling invalidated death penalties nationwide, commuting his sentence to 8 consecutive terms of 50 to 150 years, totaling 400 to 1,200 years. Incarcerated at Stateville Correctional Center, Speck adapted poorly at first, but later worked in the prison laundry and painted murals. In a controversial 1988 video interview, smuggled out by journalist Bill Curtis, Speck appeared in women's underwear, admitting drug use and boasting about the murders, claiming the nurses just happened to be there, and he had a good time. Statements that horrified the public and victims' families. Speck's health deteriorated in the 1980s from heart disease and obesity. On the 5th of December in 1991, the day before his 50th birthday, he suffered a massive heart attack and died at Silver Cross Hospital near Joliet. An autopsy revealed an enlarged heart and atherosclerosis, but no evidence of the brain abnormalities claimed at trial. His body went unclaimed by family. Cremated ashes were scattered anonymously. The townhouse was demolished in 1967, replaced by a park. Speck's rampage spurred changes in nursing education, security, and influenced discussions on serial killers, though he was classified as a mass murderer for the single-episode nature. His case remains a chilling reminder of random violence's terror in Chicago's history. And that's the chilling conclusion to our deep dive into Chicago's shadows on Easy Case Channel. If these tales of infamy left you on the edge of your seat, remember, the truth is often stranger and darker than fiction. Like, comment below with your thoughts on these notorious figures, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more gripping true crime stories that uncover the untold. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next case.